Welcome to the Bryce Eddy Show. So, hey, today I've got one of my dear friends on, my holy brother, Rabbi Michael Barclay, and had him on many times before. I'm so glad to reconnect here on this episode. How are you, sir?
I am great, thank God. It's so good to see you, Bryce. And I wish we were doing this in person because I miss you.
Yeah. Amen. I want one of those hugs, man. You
Yeah.
give the best brotherly hugs in the world, so I appreciate you.
Hey, I believe wholeheartedly that God threw Adam and Eve out of Eden, but he said, I'm going to give you something to remember Eden by, and it's called a hug.
Yeah.
I truly believe that.
Amen. Well, hey, you and I are both deeply disturbed by the rising temperatures of the day. And really, what we're talking about is just this, at this point, I think naked Jew hatred. It is complete anti-Semitism that is like really being proliferated on all of the social media platforms. It's being proliferated by people that I used to call friends. And it's being proliferated under the guise of, hey, we're just asking questions. Hey, we're just fighting for the poor children of Gaza and Palestine, and it's not honest. They are not honest, and it's capturing people. I think part of it is the algorithm. I think the algorithm has been, for whatever reason, rewarding and bubbling up these voices. It's people that I have seen that had very moderate positions, like, yeah, we can criticize a secular government of Israel. Yes, we can criticize Jews who are doing bad things. Yes, we can criticize, human beings that happen to be Jewish for evils. I mean, that is perfectly reasonable, but where it started out under that auspice, it has now moved to what I think has been an evil demonic spirit of absolute anti-Semitism. And so it's been on my heart. You and I have talked about this and wanted to have you on to discuss it a little bit more broadly, because you were one of the early guys that said, hey, it's going this way. Never again is right now, and we're seeing that.
It's profoundly sad. Yeah, it's true. And we were talking about this 2 years ago, and I've written plenty of articles for the last number of years um, about this trend. And the reality is, people say that we're in 1937 Germany, and they're wrong. It's much worse. We're in a much worse place, both in terms of anti-Semitism, Jew hatred, and in the world than we were in 1937 in Germany, for a number of reasons. Uh, First of all, it's not just confined to Europe; it's the whole world. One of the things that social media has done is allow the whole world to jump on this bandwagon of Jew hate. So that's one challenge. Another challenge is that the Marxist, Hitler had a great business plan, which was take all the different people, all the different groups, and make them hate the Jews, and then they can unify that, and then we'll pick them off one at a time and we get rid of the Jews. That's what's going on right now. And we've seen it from the left for years, back into the Obama administration and before. But we've really seen in the right, James Lindsay calls the woke right, we've really seen it, the anti-Semitism, the Jew hatred coming out, especially in the last 2 years.
Yeah, and I've had. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
There's Dennis Prager made a really interesting comment about a year ago as to why Hamas is so much worse than the Nazis. The Nazis created these death camps, and the Holocaust was a unique evil and horrible, but they were ashamed of it. They hid it. Hamas is proud of torturing and murdering and raping and killing. They do it with impunity, and they do it proudly. And that really does make it even uglier and worse. And the fact that people embrace them and say, oh, they're just nice people. You and I both studied Quran. The Quran is not a book of spiritual love like the Christian scriptures or the Jewish scriptures or the Bhagavad Gita or the Sutras. It is a book that is a military book of how to have world.
Yeah, it's about conquer, right? It's about conquering. It's about it's suppressing. It's it is their whole we are a religion of peace. Well, that's only when they are a tiny fraction of a population and have zero power. Then they present themselves as a religion of peace. Otherwise, it's, hey, convert, pay up, or die, and that is really the kind of underlying message, because it is one of conquest. It's interesting
It's
that
also
you mentioned the Nazis. Really quick, you mentioned the Nazis. The Nazis had shame because their underpinnings were still like it was a Christian world at that time, and so they were hiding their sins. They didn't want people to know of the evil, at least on the surface. Whereas much of what the Quran speaks of is, almost all things are permissible if it's against the kafir, if it's against the Jew, if it's against, someone who is your enemy. It's like, hey, yeah, lie to them, torture them, throw them off buildings. That's okay. And
well,
that's where we have a fundamental difference.
well, you said the kafir, the infidel. So the Jew is considered the infidel. The Christian is considered the infidel. But you know what? So is every Muslim who doesn't believe in Sharia law.
Correct.
So someone asked me recently, what do I think could actually change things? And I said there needs to be a reformation of the Islamic Church. We think, and we need to have, as Americans and as Westerners, we need to have a real understanding. We think that the 80% of Muslims that are moderate, quote unquote, that this is Islam, and the 10 to 20% who are like Hamas, Hezbollah, etc., are the extremists. But we're wrong. The
Correct.
10 to
That's their
20%,
orthodoxy.
that is the religion, and these others are kafirs. They're infidels. And we need to understand that that is the mainstream religion. That is their theology. The theology says the day of judgment will not come until every Jew is killed and the few left alive hide behind rocks and trees. And the tree says, "Oh, Abdullah, O Muslim, come and kill this Jew." That's Quran.
Yes.
It's in the charter of Hamas, and it's in the Palestinian Authority charter. PA is no different than the Muslim Brotherhood or Hamas. They just aren't. And we need to wake up and realize that and stop blaming the Jew as the scapegoat. Think of what, God forbid, had October 7th happened in America from Mexico. What would America have done to Mexico immediately? Israel's been so restrained in all of this. And you and I talked about this 2 years ago, about how we have a spiritual obligation to destroy, not defeat, but destroy Hamas. Israel's been so restrained, and in doing so, they've won every battle, but because of propaganda and PR, Israel's been losing the war, as have Jews. And it's because of so many of these pundits, these, as you say, people that used to be considered friends or allies, that have just decided to say, for whatever reason, there's a lot of theories as to why, but have decided to say, well, it's the Jews' fault, Israel's fault, it's the Jew, and the Jew is the problem for all the problems. The Jew is the cause of all problems in the world.
Well, that's what's absurd to me, because it's almost now, if you're on X or on a lot of the social media, almost every post where there's something wrong in the world, they will relate it back to the Jews. It doesn't matter what it is. If there's a dip in the stock market, it's like somewhere in the threads there will be this whole anti-Jew narrative that goes on. If there is doesn't matter what the crises, doesn't matter what the thing is, it's all pointing inevitably again, I think that the algorithm, for whatever reason, is rewarding this. It gets more eyeballs, but all of a sudden it bubbles up as this anti-Jew thing. And I'll give you an example. There's Charlie the other day tweeted a meme that said, "Muslims do not assimilate, they aggregate, infiltrate, and conquer. That's the plan." And we do know that's the plan, because that's what they publish as the plan. That's what they do in their speaking. I mean, remember, almost every almost everyone on earth likes to do things more and open than we believe. It's like serial killers want you to see their work because they are proud of it, right? So they will say, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're, what we're going to do in Texas. And they're, building enclaves where Sharia law and their community morality or lack thereof can reign supreme, right? And the no-go zones that you have in Europe where the police do not operate and it is de facto under Sharia law exist because they do that everywhere they go. And so, Charlie tweets that with the title, "If I tweeted this in the UK, would I be arrested?" And immediately people are responding, if you replace Muslims with Jews and tweet that in the USA, you would be canceled and lose your job. And I respond, it also wouldn't be true, because of course that is not the orthodoxy or the plan of of the Jewish people, or that's not what the what your orthodoxy says, right? And and of course I immediately get called derogatory term for a Jew. I mean, it's amazing.
Islam requires that everyone live under Sharia law, ideally as Muslims. And if you're not, you're a kafir, you're an infidel, which means you're enslaved, you're killed, or you're converted. And that's part of their goal. Jews and Judaism is not pro-conversion. So Islam wants to convert in order to control the world. Christianity wants to convert because you want me in heaven with you and you love me. And so you want me in heaven.
It's also a grassroots thing. It's not a top-down approach.
No, it's not a top-down
thing. We want it to be a decision of the heart, not at the sword.
Exactly. It is when you or Rob or I had this dialogue with Rob before that and I have this dialogue with Jews all the time, saying when a Christian comes to you and is talking to you about the beauty of Jesus and preaching the gospel, they are doing it from pure love. Right. And there's no higher compliment, period. And I take it that way. And my belief is that the Messiah will come. I'm going to say welcome, and you're going to say welcome back. And it's going to be the same guy, and we'll both accept it. But it's coming from love. Judaism actually deters conversion. When someone wants to convert to Judaism, first of all, we don't go out to convert anyone. But when someone wants to convert, they're denied 3 times to see if they really want it. And the reason is because our belief is God made you a Christian, didn't make you a Jew. And he wants you to be the best Christian you can be. And who am I to outjudge God? So it's the opposite of Islam. At 0.2% of the world's population, it's amazing all the anti-Semitism and the blame that the blood libels that are tossed upon the Jewish people. There's a lot of reasons for that anti-Semitism. We've talked about some of them historically, how they mutate. They hate us for our religion through the Middle Ages. They hate us for our culture, the 17th through 19th centuries, and ultimately they hate us for our country. But it's a whole different thing. I want a Christian to be the best Christian possible. I want a Catholic to be the best Catholic possible. I want a Christian to truly accept Christ in their heart. That gives me joy. And when I was a professor at Loyola, one of the best compliments I repeatedly got from students, when they come up with anonymous reviews afterwards, was that taking a class with Rabbi Barclay made me deepen my belief and my relationship with Catholicism. I love that. Mm-hmm. That's the antithesis of Hamas.
Correct.
That's the antithesis of Islam. We got to wake up to that. And as you said, you started this saying, these people asking questions, why can't we just ask? Candace Owens saying, well, why can't we just talk about the fact that maybe the Holocaust didn't happen? It is so incredibly crazy and stupid. People like her, like Fuentes. It's just such hate and vile. Um, Nick Fuentes, who believes that Hitler was an awesomely cool guy. Yeah, I think cool guy. This is quote. Candace, who doesn't believe that the tapes made by Joseph Mengele, the experiments he did on she's, well, they can't be real. Why would anyone do that? Why can't we
Yeah.
explore that? Well, my response to that is, okay, well, why can't we explore some other things? Why shouldn't we explore, you know what? Maybe slavery is good, Candace. Wow,
Yeah.
can't we explore that? Something, it's just so stupid
It's
and
absurd.
so insane and so dangerous.
Well,
And it's
and
become the thing.
what's sad is, I mean, and I'm particularly disappointed in Candace. I've never thought she has a magnetic and bright countenance. I do not think she has a particularly sharp mind. I think she has memorized a narrow. She's charismatic. She lights up a room. I've met her several times. I've met her personally. I was a fan of what she's doing. She was a very rare breed of, black conservative woman, and she owned it. And she parlayed it into wealth and power, and I think then she completely went off the rails, and particularly on this subject, and then aligning herself with early on with the Fuentes guys and people like that. But she tweets out some of the stupidest things on the planet now. It's like she lost the plot, lost the script, whatever. And the other day she posted, maybe you saw this, but the Moroccan flag and the Israeli flag, and well, she just stated, and then people posted that how come the Moroccan flag and the Israeli flag have the same star? Well, one's a 5-pointed star, one's a 6-pointed star, and completely different origins. But I mean, it was an ignorance of history, an ignorance of stars, I guess. I don't know. Um,
She's
but
not a
but
bright. Look, let's be honest. She's very shrewd. She's not real bright.
right.
I'm sorry. She's very shrewd. And this is a girl who actually thought that in Jerusalem there's the Armenian quarter, and the Jewish quarter, and the Christian quarter, and the Muslim quarter, and that's just where the shops are and have been for a long time. No one's forced to live there. She actually made a comment a few years ago about that. Well, it's apartheid because Jews have to live in the Jewish quarter and Christians have to live in the Christian, Muslims have to live in the Muslims. She didn't even realize that you can live anywhere in Israel, anywhere in Jerusalem. That's just where certain shops are, just like there's a Chinatown in Los Angeles and a Koreatown in
That
Los Angeles.
exists, and that exists everywhere. I mean, go to any big city and you have that. People tend to congregate, and it's not apartheid. But yeah, I mean, it's complete foolishness. And by the way, you saw this. People saw this glimpse of her when she was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he started to ask her about her beliefs in regards to climate change. And what it was is that, she didn't really have a script for that, and couldn't, and didn't examine why she believes the things that she believes. And so she really lost herself and lost a lot of credibility on that show. She recovered afterwards, but a lot of people realized that, okay, no, she's not that critical a thinker, because she couldn't handle the question, even saying, hey, that's not my area. Because you can answer a question in a savvy way and say, hey, look, that's not really my thing. I haven't spent a lot of time. But she tried to stumble through and was exposed a little bit. And I'm more sad for her, because I think she had a really powerful amount of influence, and I believe she's using it at this point for evil.
Well, look, Bryce, I one of the things that's really challenging about the internet and social media, creating people like Candace, is, and not just her, but like Fuentes, Dave Smith, and different people, is that they end up being influencers in one way or another and stifle other voices. So, as you know, I was the first person to call out Candace as an anti-Semite. Did it in writing on PJ Media. I mean, I was very clear about it, that she made comments that were so stupid. That's the only way of phrasing it. As a result, my ex account's been restricted for 8 months because there was a coordinated campaign by her followers to say that I'm a racist. Shouldn't be on X.
Yeah.
And that's happened with that. Similar things have happened with our friend James Lindsay.
Yep.
He's called out this woke right, which is really, it's kind of woke right that's very anti-Semitic.
Yeah, and what that
It's
is, let's pause really quick. So, I've had him on talking about that, but for the audience that has not heard that term or do not know what we mean by that, basically the woke left and the woke right use the same Marxist tactics essentially to gain power. And there's a lot of people that are on that woke right that decided, okay, well, if it worked for the left, let's do the same thing on the right. And I boil it down to this. I do not want masters telling me what to think or controlling my institutions on the left. I don't want masters telling me what I think and controlling my institutions coming from the right. I want liberty. I want decentralized power. And what the woke right is attempting to do is gather power for themselves, in order to win the battle. When what I want is for us to emphasize the family, emphasize the individual, emphasize liberty, and let small business and freedom reign supreme. I don't want one master exchanged for another. And that's essentially what these folks are doing to kind of just boil it down in a quick way.
These are like a saddle of horseshoe that the woke right and woke left are the same, right? And they both, and this is historically true, and it's true now. In both cases, one of the ways that they solidify their power is to create a perpetrator, to create an evil one.
Yep.
That ends up becoming
Division.
the Jew. And that's the Jew. So whether it's the woke left or the woke right, it's the Jew's fault. And so this anti-Semitism has become huge with the BLM world, where when the riots happened in Los Angeles and the Orthodox Jewish neighborhood of Pico Robertson was attacked, and I think you were one of the guys defending it that time. When it was being attacked and there were attacks going on in that area, Melina Abdullah, who is the head of BLM, Los Angeles, and she was asked, why are you demonstrating in Pico Robertson? There's no city hall, there's no federal building. Her response was, and I quote, "We wanted the people there to feel pain." That's on the left. Got the same thing on the right with the again blaming the Jews, whether it's Candace, whether it's Tucker Carlson's making a claim out of nowhere. Oh, why can't we just explore that Jeffrey Epstein really works for Israel? Let's blame all the problems on Israel. Whether it's any of that world as well, and that's what we say. It's been said all the time that the Jews are the canary in a coal mine. You see how country treats the Jews, and you see what's going to happen once they've persecuted the Jews. It's true. It starts with us, but it never ends with us. Ever.
Correct.
And you and I want the same thing. We want personal liberty, we want personal freedom, because we have our personal relationship with God. And that is our one master, that is the King of Kings. And this other craziness and this hate is so dangerous. And it's, James has posited that some people believe some people are just getting paid for it for whatever reason. They're actually making money.
I know that is happening for sure. But also because I'm close enough to some folks that I know that under network of different ways, they are getting paid. They are advertising to different things. There's all kinds of ways that they get rewarded, but the real way that this perpetuates is just because you get the clicks. Right now, the algorithm rewards it. So yes, there are a few people that are being paid, and some of them suspiciously by the organizations affiliated with the CCP. But the real deal is you're getting popularity, and you're bubbling up, and your account is growing. And the more guys like Ian Carroll talk about this stuff, he exploded on the scene as soon as he started to really go down this path of, just asking questions. And I'm disappointed in him because I, considered him a buddy who's staying out here, and I think he's, again, being rewarded. I don't think he's a bad guy. I don't think most of these people are a bad guy. Comic Dave Smith was a failed comic. I mean, he had a really dead in the water career. He's not particularly funny. He's certainly not funny about this stuff, but he's articulate. He, being a comic is to his advantage, even though he's a bad comic, because you can handle hecklers, how to go at people, how to kind of openly mock them without being too nasty, you could dismiss people in the audience. There's skills that are serving him well in just asking questions. And then, all he returns to is a self-defense mechanism. Look, war is war, and war is terrible, and war is hard. And the Israeli government and military have done a pretty amazing job in limiting the casualties in a war where people literally use children as human shields and hide among soft targets, in order to to wage this war. I mean, that's what they've done, and the Israeli government's done a great job. But he'll immediately, as a defense mechanism, retreat to, I just want to save the children. I just don't want Israel to just murder children. Okay, well, that's a pretty convenient thing to hide behind when you don't understand war, or you don't really understand what's going on.
Well, look, Dave Smith is a great example of everything that is wrong with social media. And I may have told you this story many years ago. My grandmother, God rest her soul, she was in her 90s. My brother and I got her something called web TV. And we could be on the internet on your television. And so we spent a couple hours on it, and we sat down and had some tea and toast. And I said, so Grandma, what do you think? She was 95 or something at the time. And she said, this is either going to save the world or destroy it, and I'm glad I'm not going to be alive to see which. And the wisdom of an older woman. Dave Smith is the perfect example of why it is destroying the world. So you got a guy who's an unemployed comedian, failed comedians, he said. By the way, Dave Smith's not Jewish. I'm not sure if you're aware of that.
Yeah, talk about that. You kind of mentioned that quickly.
He's not Jewish. Dave Smith claims to have a Jewish grandfather. Judaism is matrilineal, but he claims to have had a Jewish grandfather. But it's kind of weird because in one video, he's saying that his Jewish grandfather was in the concentration camps, and another, he's saying that his Jewish grandfather served in the World War II in the U.S. Army. There's no way you could have done both. So he's clearly lying about something. But even so, Judaism is either through conversion or a Jewish mother. As Evan Sayed has said, to be a Christian, you need to accept Christ in your heart. To be a Muslim, you need to accept that Allah is God and Muhammad is one prophet. To be a Jew, you had to have come from a Jewish womb. And that's the definition is very simple. It's either your mother was Jewish, her mother was Jewish, or you converted. Neither is the case with him. As well as theologically, he admits he doesn't never went to temple, didn't go to any of those things.
Yeah, so he's using it as self-defense again.
Right. So
hiding behind the kids and hiding behind his, Jewish ancestry.
And he's saying, I'm a Jew, when he's not. And then saying on top of that, making comments about Israel when he's never even been. Douglas Murray had a great comment, you can't time travel, but you do have responsibility to travel before you talk about places. But by saying I'm a self-hating Jew, by saying I'm a Jew who's going to condemn Israel, all of a sudden this guy who's an out-of-work comedian becomes Candace's boy. See, even the Jews don't like Israel because Dave Smith says so. And then this guy builds with his relationship with Rogan, with other people, to becoming successful and making a lot of money on clicks, making a lot of money when in fact he's ignorant. He's a failed comedian. He's not a Jew, and he's a liar. And it's like a child screaming in a sandbox. People are listening to. And that's a perfect example of the challenge with social media is that you don't have filters. No one's vetting people. And so you get people like him or Candace or Ian. They start making comments that just are stupid. But they speak louder and they speak faster and they are very passionate. but it's really horrible, and it's leading our culture and our world into a really dark place, starting with the anti-Semitism, the Jew hatred. But that's, as we said, that's never where it ends. You know me long enough and well enough. You know I stand up for churches. You know that I stood up for the Catholic Church numerous times in different ways when they were being attacked, Christian churches. What starts as a war against Jews and Jew hatred will end up becoming a hatred against people of faith, all people
Yes.
of faith.
Agreed.
That's because if you're going to have a master, for you and I, our master is God, period. So the first thing an authoritarian regime, an authoritarian group wants to do is destroy the relationship with religion so that the state is now the master as opposed to God being the master. And so this may start with the Jew, but it never ends there. We need to be conscious of that.
Yeah, agreed, absolutely. And what is more dangerous about this, and we started the show talking about it, is Islam. Islam is having 8 children, per household, and here we are as general Christians or general Americans here. I think our number is 1.7 or something like that. We're watching, the wholesale takeover of, European communities. And all the while, and this is where I think this is, kind of a nefarious and, evil plan. All the while, we are, doing all of this infighting, and, we're, distracted by this. And I've said going back years that is the real impending battle is going to be the West against Islam. And we're seeing that, getting more and more obvious every day goes by, and people are ignoring it and distracted by these sort of things. And again, siding with the folks that are saying that let's, wipe the Jews off the map.
Islam, most Westerners have never studied what it is. And Islam is at war with the West. And it's
Correct.
a long-term game plan. It's a long-term plan. It is at war. Its goal, it's very clear about what its goal is. There's a great book. I don't know if you've read it. It's called The 5 Languages of Love. Have you ever read this book?
Yeah.
It's fabulous, right? And you need to know how your partner receives love, right? If just because you receive love by getting gifts, they may receive love by compliments, and you can give gifts all day and it doesn't help. I remember once working with a young man. He was very upset. His girlfriend had broken up with him, and he had made sure there was a fresh rose always on our table. And she broke up with him because she felt smothered, and he didn't understand. He thought he was doing the right thing. He was loving her the way he wanted to be loved. We need to know who our partner is. In the same way, we need to know who our enemy is. And the values of Judaism and Christianity, which are effectively the exact same values, they really are. We need to remember that Jesus he reteaches what had already been taught. He makes it more beautiful in many ways and had been forgotten at that time. He brought back that love and relationship with God. Judaism and Christianity view the world in one way. We want peace and prosperity. That isn't Islam's goal.
No.
And until you realize, in the same way you need to know what your wife likes, your husband likes, until you realize that they like something different than you can't have a deep relationship. Well, until we really recognize that Islam wants us dead or converted or enslaved, period. It's not interested in having real relationship. Robert Spencer has a great line. He says, interfaith dialogue for Muslims is a one-way bridge. And
right.
Robert's so good at this stuff. And we need to recognize that. People say, well, why can't you just have peace with Arabs? Well, Golda Meir phrased it well. If the Arabs put down their weapons today, we'd have peace tomorrow. If Israel put down their weapons today, there, God forbid, would be no Israel tomorrow.
Yep.
You can't
And
sit
that is true.
peace. You can't have peace with someone who sits down and their starting point is, I want you dead.
And that's
You
what
can't go anywhere.
And that's not just what she said. That's what they say. That is what is absurd to me, is we pretend that it is a religion of peace. And again, people get away with it by relegating it to, oh, that's a small amount of extremists. No, that is their orthodoxy. That is their theology. You can't say that's not true when they write those things and they say those things and they put that in, the Hamas's charter, and then say that, oh no, it's just a tiny fraction, because you expand beyond that and there's a whole host of people that maybe they wouldn't be promoting those acts or doing those acts themselves, but they're okay with it. Beyond that, you have a whole nother, it ends up amounting to, billion people on this planet that would like to see, Israel gone and the West destroyed. And then outside of that, you might have, a nice neighbor, with some nice kids, and you guys see each other at the grocery store and around town, but they're not practicing the orthodoxy of their faith. It's an ethnic background. Then the same way that you ask, people if they're Christian on a survey, and for many years, it was like, oh yeah, 70-80% of people in America said it was that they were Christians, but only half of those really went to church and believed any of it.
Right.
I mean,
It's 10 to 20% of Jews. Every Jew knows that you're supposed to keep kosher. That's what we're commanded. You don't eat pig. You don't eat shellfish. But only 10 to 20% of Jews follow it.
Yeah.
But we all recognize that is the theology. That is what Judaism is. Their theology is about world domination. Period. End of report.
Yeah.
And we better wake up and realize it. And this Chrislam alliance with the people like Candace supporting Hamas, saying, "Oh, can't we just be nice to the poor Palestinians?" Oblivious to the fact that there is not even such a thing as Palestine. Historically, there's never been a country, nation, flag, language,
Yeah,
currency.
talk about that for a minute, because people let's go a little deeper there, because I've said, it's not really a people's group. It's not really a nation. It was essentially, put there to antagonize Israel and be this jumping off point for these kind of conflicts. And
Right. So,
and people want to ignore the history there.
okay, here's a brief history, and you can go on our temple website, nersimcha.org, nersimcha.org. Under Rabbi's teachings, there's a brief 2 or 3 page bullet point history of the region. Okay. So over 3,000 years ago, it's a Jewish kingdom, right? The Jews are the indigenous to the land. The Jews are from that part of the world. This is their land. Whether you accept because of Torah, like you and I do, that we accept the Bible, that God gave it to them, or whether you just from a socio anthropological look at it and say, okay, this is the tribe that controlled the region over 3,000 years ago. How do we know? Because we have tombs and graves that are over 3,000 years old. Okay, so we're there. The Romans conquer Israel in 70 of the Common Era. And what they do is, in order to degrade and lose the Jewish identity that is attached to Israel, and there's still Jews living there. Understand, the Jews still live there in Israel. They call the entire region Palestinian. This is after a tribe that had been extinct for many centuries called the Philistines. Now, it's not Israel that they call Philistinia. They call the region Philistinia. So Israel, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, all of these nations, the whole region is called Palestinian. Similar to the fact that we would say there's the Midwest, the Southeast in our country. You're in the Midwest, but there's no state called Midwest. It's composed of different states, Iowa, Kansas, wherever the states are. There's no citizen of the Midwest. There are citizens of each state. So the whole region is called Palestine. That name becomes taken over as Marduks take over Israel and the Ottoman Empire. And again, it's still called that. In English, it becomes called Palestine. The mandate that becomes part of Palestine is part of the Ottoman Palestine. World War I happens, and the Brits make a deal with a couple of families, Arab families, saying, if you help us against the Ottomans, we will give you kingships in different lands. And that's where we get the kings of the different countries there. The Brits won World War I. You have now kingdoms of Saudi Arabia, etc. And they call that region the British Mandate of Palestine. They still keep the same name. But there is no Palestinian people, there's no Palestinian language, they're Arabs. They just call that. So there's still never been a state, a country, or anything called Palestine. In 1948, when you have the partition, they say, okay, we're going to call this little tiny strip Israel, we're going to call this strip, we're going to make Arab, and we're going to call it Palestine. This was called the Mandate of Palestine. The Arabs attack Israel. Israel defends itself, continues to defend itself, continues to win war after war after war, all defensive wars. And according to international law, when you do win a defensive war, whatever territory you end up conquering is yours. But they go through this. In 1964, the Arab League recognizes that they're getting their butts kicked militarily, but they're also getting their butts kicked by the world. The world hates them. The world loves Israel. Everyone loves an underdog. So the Arab League hires a New York public relations company called Armstrong, Yahtzee, and Hirsch, and in 1964. And this public relations company out of New York comes up with this concept that says, well, what you need is a victim. So we're going to create Palestine. And that is the birth of the Palestinian Liberation Organization run by Yasser Arafat. That's the first time there is a Palestinian organization. 100 years ago, the people in Gaza, they called themselves Egyptians. The people in Judea Samaria called themselves Jordanians. The people in the Golan called themselves Syrians, etc. 1964, the concept of a victim is created by a New York PR company. From there, that gets perpetuated. And it's become, we're now talking 60 years later, and it's accepted as a truth, but there is no such truth. There is no such thing. It has never happened. There never has been. So it was created to be an enemy of Israel. It was not created for land. 5 times they've been offered having a Palestinian state. 5 times they rejected. Every time. Israel unilaterally pulled out of Gaza in 2005. They created an infrastructure of hospitals and buildings and greenhouses, pulled out. The IDF forcibly removed Jewish families who were living in Gaza and took them out. Said, okay, go, have a nice Gaza. Go, we've set you up now, go have a country. First thing that happened, they tore down all the infrastructure, tore down the greenhouses. This is not a war about land. It never has been. This is about, going back to the Quran, it's about worldwide domination of a religion. And that's why Hamas, which is founded in 1988, says it is an arm of the Muslim Brotherhood, which is founded 70 years earlier. And there is no such thing historically as Palestine. There just isn't. And we need to recognize that, and we need to change the narrative to back to what the actual history was and the actual truth is. And you know me, I've written articles about the fact before Trump even had come out with the idea that there should be a third state. Gaza should be its own state, and it should be a French Riviera. I actually use that term because it's one of the most beautiful beaches on the planet.
Yeah, and it's been squandered by a people group and strip mined by a people group in order to antagonize Israel. It's been the launching off point in order to wage a propaganda war against Israel. And the leaders of it are fabulously wealthy, have stolen the money and the resources, and live in Qatar. I mean, it's all a game that's being perpetuated, and idiots like Comic Dave Smith and Candace Owens and others have fallen into that trap, just asking questions, and have fallen into the Jew hatred game in such a obviously stupid way. And I still am just blown away. I mean, again, I know you and I have differences on Satan and that viewpoint, but this is stuff that just affirms my faith, because it has to be orchestrated by a great evil. Because the fact that all of these knuckleheads are all getting together and playing this game almost unknowingly that they're being manipulated. I mean, how is it that they that they'll call what Israel says as propaganda, but then they'll believe wholesale what Hamas says as absolute fact and truth? I mean, it's unbelievable that people are that stupid, but apparently they are right now.
Well, look, I've been wrestling for well over a year with the fact that our theology does not have a Satan, a devil, the way that Christianity does, because of exactly what you said. We accept that there is evil. There's no question there's evil in the world, and we that's man's choice. What's called the Yetzirah, the evil inclination. But I got to tell you, just on a personal level, I've been personally wrestling with this whole thing because it is so darn dark and it seems so choreographed. And whether it's because of greed, where someone wants to get a lot of clicks, and so they want to make money that way, or sell a book, or whatever it may be. Whether it's because they believe this hate, whether it's they just want to blame their own problems on a minority, it's evil and it's dark. And this is a piece that I think you and I agree on, that most Westerners who are not religious just will poo-poo, which is this is not just a war between Israel and Hamas. It is that. And it's not just a war between Islam and Western culture, of which Israel is merely the front line. It's that too. This is a war of good and evil.
Amen.
Literally,
Agreed.
this is a war between good and evil. On the grandest and most supernal and spiritual ways, and in this most simple physical ways, this is truly a war of good versus evil, of wanting freedom, wanting liberty, wanting to have individual rights, and something else. And I think that's, we both would agree on that statement.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Well, thank you, sir. I love you. I appreciate you coming on.
I miss you so much. Come back and help me here in California, will you?
Yeah, well, I'm due for a visit, and we'll do one of these in person. But yeah, I'd love for you to come back on frequently again. I always enjoy you, and tell the audience how we can follow you, how we can support you.
So, as I said, there was a coordinated campaign to take me off of social media, calling me racist, which is ironic given that I'm a godfather of 7 people in an Indian tribe, and I was initiated by Yoruba people in the path of Ifa and all the different things I do.
Let's not let facts get in the way of accusations, though.
What's Larry Elder's comment? Facts to these people are like kryptonite to Superman.
Yeah.
So, but I can be reached at RabbiMichaelBarclay.com, but you can also at the Rabbi's Table on X, on Twitter, and things like that. It's just started that account back up to put out the articles and the different things, because there aren't, sadly, and this really does give me a lot of sadness, there are not a lot of Jewish voices out there standing up. The
Shameful.
Orthodox Jews often just want to stay quiet, and the conservative and reform rabbis often more committed to a religion of political leftism than they are to the religion of Judaism. And so you have people. You have rabbis. There's rabbis that are endorsing this guy Mandani in New York.
Unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. And there was, so the reform movement put out, I think it was the day before yesterday. They put out a statement. They actually reached out to Pam Bondi to say, please don't give Rodriguez, the guy who killed those 2 staffers at the Israeli embassy, and was screaming, shot them multiple times and yelling free Palestine. They actually reached out to say, please don't put the death penalty on the table.
Unbelievable.
So there are not a lot of, unfortunately, Jewish voices. Unfortunately, we've really lost Dennis Prager, and we pray for his health. Yeah. Dennis had that horrible accident a year ago. And there just aren't a lot of Jewish voices. So I'm kind of stuck here in California, being that voice, and you can again at the Rabbi's Table. You can find me there, and easily enough in other places. So, and I write for PJ Media. I'm a columnist for PJ Media, which is owned by Sam.
Yeah. Well, I love you, brother, and yeah,
Love you too,
let's
man.
have you back on. To God be the glory, and
Oh,
we are
man.
out.
Oh, man. And blessings on you and your family in every way. Lots of love.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Hey, thank you for watching or listening to this show. If you are someone who listens to us on the podcast apps, please go to our Rumble channel. Even if you're not going to watch us there, we'd appreciate you hitting subscribe. We want to boost those numbers up and make sure that that channel continues to grow. But again, thank you so much for listening to us.